my soul inside that famine, said that's it. True never flaking the cold winter. I just came to ball with the gold winners. Fast forward, turn to a road runner. Spirit caught me here, go get it. Shed blood, give me lemonade on this cold bender. Always take me turning, always chasing after Vicky. Took me to its burning, gave me peace and chose to cleanse me up. Now I'm testifying of your greatness, this a different look. Life been hitting hard, let's take it slow. Take a walk by the river and let you flow. Cause Lord, you are all
All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So pumped you are here. I got good news and I got bad news. And I'm going to give them both to you at the same time. Tonight, we end our study in Genesis. And everyone went, oh. But it's been so good. It's been such a phenomenal time going through the book. And tonight we're going to wrap up. And before we give you some time to catch up with the people at your table, I do just want to give you a heads up about the next 2 months on Wednesday nights, because we are going to be running the same schedule that we ran last summer. And that is on normal Wednesday nights, we have what's called Grow Night. Everyone say Grow Night. Grow Night. On the first Wednesday of every month, we have our first Wednesday gathering, which is our extended time of prayer and worship. So the first Wednesday of July and August, we will continue our normal first Wednesday gatherings. On our regular Wednesday nights in July, instead of Grow Nights, we have Go Nights. And not to confuse you by moving some letters in and out of it, but in July, we are going to be doing some serve projects on Wednesday nights. Now, 2 of those serve projects are going to be right here on campus. And both of those projects, there will be dinner provided just like when you came tonight. There are 2 of those projects that are going to be off-site. Now, we do need you to sign up if you're going to be coming to serve, because we are going to be preparing a specific amount of food for everyone who's coming to serve on those nights here at the church. And we need to know who's going to be serving off-site with us. So on a chair back behind you, there's one of those NFC tags. If you tap your NFC tag, it has all the information for Go Nights on there, all the locations, the dates, and a way for you to sign up right there. If you want us to send you some information, you can just simply, on your attendance sheet that's on your table, write your email address that you'd like information about Go Nights, and we'll make sure that you get everything sent to you as well. In August, we'll have our normal first Wednesday gathering in August, and then on Wednesday nights in August, it'll be just like our normal Grow Nights. There'll be dinner, but instead of doing Bible study in the month of August, we take August to set aside for prayer nights. We got a lot to pray about, amen? And we're going to take some time. We're going to pray over our church, over our community. We're going to pray for our kids as they're getting ready to head back to school. We're going to do some different things. They're going to be a lot of fun. On one of the nights, we're going to do some prayer walks around the campus. But it's going to be a prayer emphasis in the month of August. And then when we get into September, we'll have our first Wednesday gathering. And then we roll right back into our regularly scheduled Grow Nights. All right? So July, we're going to go. August, we're going to pray. September, we're going to come back and get back to studying the Bible together. Sound good? All right, cool. Last but not least, we do have our kids' day camp and our youth summer slam that's coming up here in the month of July. And if you got kids or grandkids, man, this is a great opportunity. You really don't want them to miss out on it, because these are the sort of moments that help them cement friendships, relationships, and most importantly, a different way for them to access their relationship with God than a normal week-to-week event. So make sure your kids are a part of Kids Day Camp and Summer Slam. It really will make a really big difference in their spiritual journey and in their life. So I want to give you a couple minutes just to catch up with your table, ask them how their weekend was, what their plans are for the 4th of July, and then we're going to dive into our final installment of Genesis. All right, ready, set, go. I'll be back in a moment. All right. Hey, we're going to dive into it tonight. First of all, can you do me a huge favor? Can we welcome our West Seattle family tonight as they're joining us? Hey, real quick here in Issaquah, specifically, point of order, there should be a piece of paper on your table that looks like this. It says on the top, Teen Reach Adventure Camp, and then it says Prayer Partner Sign-Up List. Now, this is different than our Kids Day Camp and our Youth Summer Slam. This is here because we put on this Teen Reach Adventure Camp that is for teens in the foster care system. And what you can do by signing up here is you are signing up to be a prayer support for this camp. And by putting your email on here, they're gonna send you information, and all they're gonna be asking you to do is pray over the boys that are at that camp, pray over the girls that are at that camp, or pray for both and the leaders that are going to serve. These are very impactful moments in these kids' lives, so if you'd like to be a prayer partner, that's what this piece of paper is for. You're not signing your kid up for VBS Day Camp if you put your information on here. So don't show up to VBS and be like, what, I signed the paper on the table? And they're gonna be like, yeah, sorry, you're not, you don't have a spot reserved here. So, all right, who's ready for Genesis? Okay, now, fair warning. We're gonna cover 13 chapters tonight. So what that means is we're gonna have a couple sections where we are going to read, and then there's gonna be a lot of, you're gonna get the PJV, the Pastor Josh version of the story, okay? So I'm gonna give you some summary details of what's happening. But first, let's give you the full picture. So let's go ahead and throw up our timeline here that we've been working through. This is Genesis. This is all of it, okay? So all the way, going on 2 months ago now, we started in the beginning with creation. And as we walked through creation, obviously we talked about how God not only created everything, he spoke everything into existence, but God actually formed Adam from the dust of the earth. He breathed his life into Adam, created Eve, secondary. And then obviously we walked through Genesis 3, the fall, and walked through everything that took place with the fall of man and the brokenness in our relationship with God. Some really important aspects of that were the fact that God knew that Adam and Eve had sinned, and even though they were hiding from God in their shame, God came looking for them. And God came and found them. He came to them. He confronted their sin. He covered their sin and created for them, as they had tried to sew together fig leaves. The first animal sacrifice is right there as God kills the animals, uses their skin to create clothing for Adam and Eve. But then there's consequence to sin. Right? So God has to remove them from the garden. From there, we know that sin begins to spread. Adam and Eve have kids. We're introduced to Cain and Abel. This is obviously the part of the story where murder is entered into the story. And this whole aspect of the lifeblood being taken sinfully. And out of this, sin continues to grow to the point where God decides, I'm just gonna start over. I'm gonna wipe everybody out. But there was one man on the face of the earth who was considered righteous, Noah. And so God decides he's gonna spare Noah. And remember, just in the same way that God came and met Adam and Eve in their brokenness, and God covered them and gave them a way out of the penalty and punishment of what their sin rightfully deserved. Here in the midst of all of the sinfulness of humanity, God again provides a way of salvation, this time through Noah and his family and the animals on the ark. And again, you're gonna find repeatedly all throughout the book of Genesis and all throughout the Old Testament, God continuing to use this thematic pattern of humanity walking away, God coming to us, God being the one who confronts our sin, covers our sin, and all the way up until the point where we're gonna be introduced to Jesus and the Gospels, who would eventually come and do that once and for all. We know that after the flood is over, God pledges his covenant to Noah through the sign and symbol of a rainbow that he would never again wipe out humanity through flooding the earth again. Noah throws too big of a party and gets drunk and sins. And in the midst of this, there is a whole issue that rises up with Noah's sons. And Noah has to curse one of his sons because he exposes his sinfulness and his nakedness, which then moves us into the Tower of Babel. As humanity begins to imperialize and begins to build structures and cities. And it's the first time we're introduced to characters who are using their physical strength to create forms of leadership and governance and having rule over other men. We find that they decide to go against everything that God has been telling them to do, and they decide to build for themselves a tower that they might be able to get to heaven on their own without God. And God decides to confuse their languages. And so at once they all spoke the same language, and in a moment God separates them by their languages and brings confusion to them, and they begin to scatter together with their known languages. And this is where we really begin to see humanity starting to spread out into the earth, and different groups of people, with their shared languages, beginning to settle down in different parts of the known world at the time. Now, out of this, the nations scatter, people scatter, and God then comes and singles out one man. And that is a man by the name of Abram. If you remember the story, Abram comes from a very wealthy family. His father was well-to-do. And God speaks to Abram and says, I'm going to make a great nation out of you, but I need you to leave your father's home, and you need to set off with your family and all of your possessions to a land that I will show you. And so Abram, not knowing where he's going, but trusting that God is leading him, packs up all of his stuff and heads off. And God provides Abram with some pretty amazing promises. Promises that he's going to give him descendants, as numerous as the sands in the seashore and the stars in the sky. But the problem was Abram and his wife were barren. They weren't able to have kids. And so they go through all sorts of Jerry Springer ways of trying to create their family on their own. Genesis is full of all sorts of crazy, wild, stupid things that people do. And Abram decides, him and his wife decide, since she can't have kids, that he should sleep with their maidservant. And he does, and she produces a child named Ishmael. Ishmael is not the child of the promise, because God said that he was going to give Sarah a child. And so in the midst of this whole issue, God eventually changes Abram's name to Abraham. He changes Sarai's name to Sarah, and he detaches their identity from the family that's behind him. And he attaches their identity to the future family that he's going to give them. Eventually, God gives them a son, Isaac. And Isaac was the child of the promise. He's the one through which God is going to bring the lineage, not only of the fulfillment of all the promise, but eventually through which he would bring Jesus. And so there's this crazy moment in the story, many of you remember it, where God asks Abram to sacrifice his son. And in this moment, we talked about how God obviously isn't going to hurt Isaac, but the more important thing is God wanted to know if Abraham's heart fully belonged to him. And so you follow the story. Obviously, we know Abraham obeys, but God spares Isaac's life and then provides a ram that is caught in the thicket to take Isaac's place. Again, we're only a couple stories here into Genesis, and again, we see God showing up, providing substitutionary atonement, stepping in the place where man deserved punishment. God took it upon himself and dealt with it himself and provided a way for there to be a sacrifice without Abraham having to sacrifice his son, Isaac. And listen, I'm giving you the super Spark Notes version right now of all of this, okay? All right, so after this happens, we find that Isaac has some kids, Jacob and Esau. And this is where Pastor Andy picked up for us last week. And when you were introduced to Jacob and Esau, there's this whole crazy story of, who was born first, all that sort of stuff. Jacob's name literally meaning deceiver. He eventually talks his brother into giving him his birthright, and all of this whole thing's going on. And as Jacob is fleeing and running for his life from his brother Esau, God encounters Jacob. And God speaks to Jacob about the promises that had been given not only to his father Isaac, but to his grandfather Abraham. And God in this moment, as Jacob is wrestling with God and God's speaking to him, God changes Jacob's name to Israel. Okay, so this moment here in Genesis, as God changes Jacob's name to Israel, is not only the reason why we have the tribes of Israel, the sons of Israel, but this is also where the origination of the nation of Israel, the nation of Israel that you're gonna find not only for the rest of the Bible, but to the nation of Israel we have today, traces its name lineage all the way back to the name change that God gave Jacob in Genesis, okay? So Jacob is gonna grow up and Jacob is gonna have some sons, a number of them, right? And we're gonna get into all of it here in just a moment. But what you hear all throughout the Bible is God is often referred to as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are really referred to and viewed as kind of the three patriarchs of our faith origination. And what's gonna take place, where we're gonna get into tonight, is there's gonna be a shift from the patriarchs into the tribes, into the nation of Israel. And we're gonna begin to see how that's gonna begin to shape the rest of the Old Testament story. Are you ready? Okay, I know that was like 10 minutes of verbal vomit just to set up the story for where we're headed tonight. All right, so here we go. Jacob has some sons. I want you to go with me to Genesis chapter 37, and we are gonna focus our time together on the last remaining character in Genesis that's gonna be very important for us to get introduced to, and that is one of Jacob's sons by the name of Joseph. Okay, so Joseph is going to be the main character we're gonna focus on for the next couple chapters, and we're gonna start in chapter 37. This is gonna be the longest piece of text we're gonna read because it's gonna set up the rest of the story. Here we go, verse 1. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. Now remember, that is the promised land. So Jacob is back in Canaan, in the promised land as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Now, do we have anyone in the room, you've got younger siblings? Raise your hand if you got younger siblings, okay? How many of you loved it when your younger siblings tattletaled on you? None of us, right? And for some reason, I feel like younger siblings always get the spiritual gift of tattletaling. It's just one of the things. But here, it's so ironic that even as we are introduced to Joseph from the very beginning, one of the very first things that we find is that the Bible describes Joseph as someone who loved to tell his dad how all the bad things his older brothers were doing. Joseph was probably a rule follower, very into following the rules, and his older brothers were obviously not, okay? So Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. Now, all of you who raised your hand earlier because you have younger siblings, that's me. I've got 2 younger siblings. My sister Janelle is 3.5 years younger than me. And then I got my brother Jordan, who's 10.5 years younger than me. And I am convinced that my brother Jordan was raised by 2 different parents than I had. He had different parents than I don't know what happened to them in that 10.5-year span, but I think all of the things that they experimented with their parenting on me and my sister, they figured a couple things out. They realized like, oh, you eat dirt, you're not gonna die, you're gonna be okay, you figure some things out. And by the time my younger brother Jordan came around, like he had a different set of rules. Like he didn't have to live by the same rules that Janelle and I did. And I just was convinced, I was like, listen, like this is not fair, this is not equal, this is not right. And I think my parents just loved him a little more than they loved the rest of us. And maybe you experienced something like that in your home where maybe you had a younger sibling, you felt like they got raised by a different set of rules than you. Imagine being in this situation. Joseph is already a tattletale, and now the tattletale's daddy's favorite. And daddy's favorite is getting a special coat. This coat that he's gonna wear is gonna be a constant reminder that dad loves him more than the rest of you. And it says that his brothers could not even say a kind word about him. Now, it says one night, Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. His brothers responded, so you think you're gonna be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them, right? How many of you know it's not always what you say, but it's how you say it, right? And it says that not only did they hate Joseph's dreams, they hated how he talked about them, right? The way he talked about it. You can read between the lines a little bit. It could mean they hated that he brought it up all the time. It could mean that they hated that he sounded a little arrogant when he talked about it. There could be a lot of reasons. Regardless, the way Joseph talked about these dreams rubbed them the wrong way. Soon, Joseph had another dream. And again, he told his brothers about it. Listen, I've had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. Now, Jacob had 12 sons. So for there to be a sun and a moon, father, mother, 11 stars, 11 siblings, you see where this dream is going, okay? All of the sun and the moon and the stars bowed low before me. This time, he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers. But his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that, he asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, your brothers are pasturing the sheep in Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them. I'm ready to go, Joseph replied. Go. He says, go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along. Jacob said, then come back and bring me a report. So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. Who are you looking for? He asked. I'm looking for my brothers. Joseph replied, do you know where they're pasturing their sheep? Yes, the man told him. They've moved on from here, but I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming and they recognized him in the distance. Any idea why they would have recognized him in the distance? Oh, you mean that bright coat of many colors that he was wearing? A little easy to spot in the distance, right? It says when they saw him coming in the distance, as he approached, they made plans to kill him. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Now, what's gonna take place from here on in this part of the story is that when they're gonna argue about what to do with him. And when Joseph gets there, they're gonna jump him, they're gonna beat him, they're gonna strip him of this wonderful coat and all of his clothes, and they're gonna throw him in a cistern, in a water pit. And while they have him in the pit, they continue to argue about what in the world they're gonna do with him. Some of the brothers are like, let's kill him. And some of the other brothers are going, we can't kill him. He's our own flesh and blood. He's our own brother. And while they're having this argument about what they're gonna do with him, says that there's a band of Ishmaelite traders that they can see passing by in the distance. So they decide, let's not kill him, let's sell him. So they sell Joseph to these Ishmaelite traders as a slave. They then take Joseph's coat of many colors, they rip it up, and they smear it with animal blood and take it back to their father, Jacob, and tell Jacob that Joseph has been killed out in the wilderness by a wild animal. And Jacob is obviously, as any dad would be, he is brokenhearted. He is just absolutely devastated by the news. And what you're gonna find here is that as Joseph is sold as a slave to the Ishmaelite traders, they're gonna go to Egypt. And in Egypt, Joseph is going to be sold to Potiphar. Potiphar was one of the governing rulers underneath Pharaoh. And Potiphar buys Joseph, And the Bible says that as Joseph works in Potiphar's house, everything he puts his hand to begins to prosper. Everything that Joseph touches flourishes. And quickly, Potiphar elevates Joseph to the highest ranking official in his home. Literally, Joseph is in charge of everything in Potiphar's house. And as long as Joseph is in charge, everything flourishes. In fact, the Bible says that God is with Joseph in Potiphar's house, and God blesses him in everything that he does. Now, here's a problem. Joseph's a good-looking kid, and Potiphar's wife had feelings for Joseph. And so she begins to plot and scheme about how she's going to get Joseph to sleep with her. She regularly makes advances at him, and he regularly turns her down. The Bible says that one day Joseph went into the house to do his duties as he normally does, and there was no one else there. The Bible says that because that would have been uncommon. That would have been a very odd thing. Odds are Potiphar's wife strategically sent everyone out so that she would be in the house alone with Joseph when he came in. It says that while Joseph is doing his work, she sneaks up on him, grabs him by his shirt, and then says, "Come to bed with me." Now, what's so awesome about Joseph's response is Joseph does not negotiate with her. Joseph does not try to talk her down. The Bible says that Joseph peels out of his shirt that she's holding on to, and he runs out of the house. I don't have time to sermonize this point for you, but I just want to say this. There are some of us in the room, you need to stop negotiating with temptation, and you need to just get out of the house. You just need to have a practice where you don't even let yourself hang out in an environment where you have the potential to give in to something that's going to be detrimental to you. Joseph peels out of his shirt, out of his jacket, runs out of the house, and leaves Potiphar's wife standing there embarrassed, holding his shirt. So the only thing she can think of to salvage her own dignity is she decides to lie. So she screams loud enough that the other servants come running to see what has happened. And when they come running in the house, she says that Hebrew that my husband bought as a slave tried to rape me. And the only thing I have is his shirt as he ran out of here when I screamed. So Potiphar comes home, she tells him the same story, and Potiphar is so enraged that he sends Joseph to be imprisoned. So I want you to go to Genesis 39. We're gonna read a couple verses that are gonna set up the end of this section of the story. Chapter 39, verse 19. It says, Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison. Now, earlier it said that when he was sold into Potiphar's house, that the Lord was with Joseph as he served in Potiphar's house. As he's now transitioning into prison, the Bible again says that the Lord was with Joseph as he went to prison and showed his faithful love to him. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. You ever stop to think about what an odd thing that is? That Joseph was such a good prisoner that the guard put a prisoner in charge of all the other prisoners? That the guard put a prisoner in charge of the prison? Is that not strange to anybody else? And the Bible is going to an extreme length here to even highlight for us just how different the demeanor, the anointing, the experience and expression that people came in contact with when they were with Joseph. It was such a different experience that everything that he put his hand to, God gave him grace and favor. And I just want to say this to you. There are going to be times where people are going to betray you. People are going to lie about you. People are going to put you in difficult situations. But when you carry yourself with character and integrity, and you don't allow yourself to try and take matters into your own hands, but trust the Lord to be your defender and trust the Lord to be the one who's gonna protect you, there, even in the midst of an unfair situation, God allowed Joseph to flourish in the midst of even being treated unfairly because he was faithful in his walk with the Lord and faithful to be a man of character and integrity. Now, Joseph is gonna meet a couple guys while he's in prison. Remember, this is not any ordinary prison. What kind of prison is this? This is a prisoner that is for people who worked for the king. So these are all people who've been thrown into prison, who worked in the king's palace, worked in the government, and there are a couple guys in prison who start having dreams. Now, how did Joseph's story start? God gave Joseph a dream. In fact, God gave Joseph two dreams, right? Dream about the grain, dream about the moon, the stars. Joseph understood dreams, and God gave Joseph a special ability to be able to interpret what the dreams meant, this gift of discerning what the dream meant. So these guys are in prison. One of them was the king's cupbearer. The other was a baker, okay? Now, I don't know if the king just got really upset with dinner, like he just didn't like what was going on, but he threw both these guys in prison for different reasons, and they have different dreams. And as they're talking about it in prison, God reveals to Joseph the meaning of these dreams. So he tells the baker, he tells the cupbearer that your dream means that you're gonna be restored to your position in the king's palace. But to the baker, he goes, your dream means that in 3 days, you're gonna be executed. And both of these dreams come to pass. One is released and restored back to his position. The other is executed. And as they're being taken out of the prison, Joseph tells him, don't forget me. Don't forget me when you're brought back into your position. And the guy's like, I won't forget you, right? And then literally the next line in the Bible says, 2 full years later, right? Like that's literally the next verse. After this guy's like, I won't forget you, 2 full years later. And so just as a reminder, right? Like God's timing, God's timeline is not always the timing or timeline that we would want, right? How many of you we want God to be like a microwave? God, I need this in 10 seconds, right? And sometimes God's going, listen, if I gave it to you in 10 seconds, you'd ruin it. Like there's a sequence of things that have to happen here so that I can set up really the big picture of what's gonna take place. So the cupbearer is restored and Pharaoh begins to have dreams. And he is freaking out about these dreams. Can't figure out what they mean. He calls together all of the wisest people within the kingdom, and no one can tell him what these dreams mean. Literally, the cupbearer is standing there, and Pharaoh goes, is there not anyone in all of the land who can tell me what these dreams mean? And it's like the cupbearer is standing there, and he goes, oh my gosh, right? I totally forgot. There's this guy back in jail and he can interpret dreams. And Pharaoh goes, well, go get him. There's one of the funniest lines in the Bible. It says that Joseph had to go shower and shave. Like that's the detail. It says after a quick shower and shave, Joseph was brought in before the king. So now here's Joseph 2 years later and he's standing before Pharaoh. He tells him what these dreams mean. And Joseph says this task is much too great for me. It's beyond my ability. But the God I serve, he can tell you what these dreams mean. So go ahead and tell me, and I will hear from the Lord, and the Lord will tell what these dreams mean. So Pharaoh tells Joseph what these dreams are. And Joseph says, both of these dreams you've had mean the same thing. And the Lord is trying to warn you that there is going to be a season of incredible harvest, that everyone's grains, everyone's crops are gonna have bumper harvests. It's gonna be 7 years of flourishing and thriving that is going to be followed by 7 years of famine. And there's gonna be just a devastating famine that is going to ravage the land. And Pharaoh hears this and he's like, this is amazing. how in the world did you know this? There is incredible wisdom that is on you. There's obviously, he says, obviously the God that you serve has given you the ability to understand and discern and have incredible wisdom. And he decides in this moment to put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. He says, literally the only thing that you will not have access to is my throne. Everything else will be under your leadership, and however you see fit to handle the feast and handle the famine, it's in your care. So Joseph begins to make plans, and he begins to store up all of the grain. And sure enough, as just as God said during the dreams, there was 7 years of incredible harvest. And Joseph is beginning to bring in all of the harvest. He gets married, and Joseph has 2 sons. These 2 sons are Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, those names are gonna be important here in just a moment. So Joseph goes through this incredible season. Everything's booming. He's storing up all the grain. Everything's going great. And then the famine hits. And the famine hits hard. It doesn't just hit Egypt. It hits Canaan. All of the promised land, all the surrounding nations are just devastated by this famine. Now, what begins to happen is people start to come to Joseph because he's in charge of all the resources. They come to Joseph to buy grain because who's been storing up grain for 7 years? Joseph. In fact, it says that Joseph had so much grain that they stopped counting it because there was no way to even keep track of all the grain that they had stored up. So Joseph stores up all the grain, and what happens is Jacob, his father, back in Canaan, starts experiencing the famine. And he tells his sons, there's no food for us here. I'm gonna send you to Egypt because it sounds like they've got grain. Go to Egypt and see if you can buy us some food, or we're gonna die. Now, Jacob, because he was so devastated by losing Joseph, he holds one of the brothers back, the youngest remaining son, he keeps back at home and sends the other 10 to Egypt. Now, imagine this scene. Here is Joseph. He is sitting in his chair, in his throne, as the person who's in charge of distributing all of the resources. And it says that in walk his 10 brothers. And his 10 brothers bow down before him and beg to let them buy some grain that they might live. Joseph immediately recognizes his brothers, but the brothers do not recognize him. Now, there's probably a couple reasons for that. Number one, Joseph's older, right? He's grown. But second, Joseph has been given a new name. Joseph now has an Egyptian name. Joseph is dressed in Egyptian garb because he is the second in command of all Egypt. And how many of you ever seen someone out of context, right? And you're like, you don't recognize them because you're not expecting to see them. They think Joseph is dead. They think he's gone. They're never gonna see him again. They're not looking for him. So Joseph begins to ask them a lot of questions. Tell me about your fathers. Your father's still alive. Where are you coming from? Where's your other brother, right? He starts asking them a whole bunch of questions. And so they promise like, no, because Joseph starts going, how do I know you're not spies? How do I know you're not here just looking at all of our grain and coming to figure out how weak we are because you're gonna come attack us? And they go, no, we promise. And he goes, well, the only way that I will know that you are telling me the truth is one of you has to stay here and the rest of you go back and get your younger brother and bring him back to us. So they start talking about who is going to have to stay. And Joseph singles out Benjamin. He says, you're gonna stay here. And they go, no. In fact, Judah says, don't make Benjamin stay. I will stay in his place. Take anyone else, but keep me. Now, real quick, we've been walking through a lot of symbolism and imagery so far through the book of Genesis, haven't we? Does anyone know what's gonna come through the line of Judah? The kings, and then eventually Jesus. Here in this moment, Judah is the one who says, don't take him, take me instead. And again, just a small little wink that through the line of Judah is going to come the one who's going to do that for you and me as well. To say, don't take him, take me instead. Fast forward, they go and get their brother. They come back. There's this whole back and forth. There's weird stuff that goes on. Joseph puts their money back in their sacks. They get home and they realize that they have the grain they bought and the money they paid for it. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're going to think we stole everything. Then they come back again. He sends them back again and puts a silver cup. It's all sorts of crazy stuff. Okay, read it for yourself. It's wild. Eventually, they come back with their brother. And Joseph can't take it anymore. Decides it's time to reveal himself. So he sends all of the court out of his room. It's just Joseph and his brothers. And it says that Joseph breaks down weeping. And he says, it's me, your brother. And they don't even believe him. They can't even believe what they're seeing. He says, no, it's really me. Is our father still alive? And there's this just incredible moment where they are gripped by fear because they realize the very same guy they beat up and sold as a slave now has the ability to take their lives as well. And Joseph just reminds them, like, I'm not gonna punish you. And Joseph says something powerful in this moment. He says, what you intended for harm, God intended for good. He says, you think you sent me here, but God is the one who brought me here so that I could save many in this time and in this moment. Here Joseph is, his brothers, now in a place where he gets to save his own family's life. So they go and they get their dad. They move everybody to Egypt. Do you see where this is starting to lead us? Okay, so Israel, Jacob and his family now moves to Egypt. Pharaoh gives them the prime land in Egypt because they're shepherds. So he gives them the land of Goshen to live in. So all of these sons of Jacob begin to grow their families in Egypt. So just if you ever wondered all of the sons of Jacob, let's just walk through them real quick. There's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Okay? Now, those are the tribes of Israel. What's gonna happen is that as Jacob is getting to the very end of his life, he is going to call for Joseph. Joseph's going to come and bring his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, okay? A lot of J names. Jacob says, I'm gonna bless your kids. In fact, I'm gonna treat them as if they were my own children, okay? So Jacob goes to bless Ephraim and Manasseh, and Joseph positions them so that the older son, Manasseh, would get the right hand, because that is the hand of favor. That's the hand that goes on the eldest son. The left hand would go on Ephraim because he's the younger son. So Joseph sets it up. Jacob goes to put his hands on to bless him, and he does this. He switches his hands on purpose, switches his hands and blesses Ephraim and Manasseh, and Joseph gets upset. He's like, no, you got it all wrong. You put your hand on the wrong kid. And he flips their hands back, and Jacob responds. He goes, no, this was on purpose, because even though both of them will be great, Ephraim will be a greater nation, and there will be greater blessing that will come upon his life. And so what's gonna happen is this. When it gets to the point of the allotment of land in the promised land, you're gonna find that there are two names from the original tribes that are not listed, Levi and Joseph. The reason, because the Levites were the priests, so they did not get an allotment of land in the promised land. They had their own section with the tabernacle, okay, the temple. Joseph doesn't get his own allotment of land. That allotment is given to Ephraim and Manasseh. So between Levi not getting land and Joseph's land being split up between his two sons, we wind up with the 12 allotments of land and the 12 tribes. You still with me? Okay, this is a lot of information, I know. But here's what's gonna happen. These 12 tribes are going to then begin to populate and expand in Egypt. Jacob is gonna die. They're gonna go bury Jacob back in Canaan. And then as the Israelites begin to expand in number, you're gonna get to the end of Genesis 50, and you're gonna flip over into one of the craziest books in the Bible, the book of Exodus. Excuse me. You're excused. And what you're gonna find is this. Now we have this Hebrew nation, the nation of the Israelites, that has grown in population, grown in wealth, grown in strength. And when you flip over into chapter 1 in Exodus, it's going to say that there then came a Pharaoh who did not know of Joseph and was not aware of the relationship that these people had with the previous pharaohs. And because of that, when he looked at them, he began to become worried and concerned with how strong and numerous they were. And if there were ever to be an enemy that would come and attack us, we don't know that these Israelites will stand with us in battle, or maybe they will turn against us in battle. So we need to stop their population from growing. So I'm gonna command that all of the firstborn sons, all of the males that are born to these Israelite women will be executed. And this is where we are introduced to the story of Moses. And eventually, the Lord will lead the people of Israel out of Egyptian captivity and begin the journey back to the promised land. And that is the story of Genesis. There you go. All right. So I summarized a lot for you right there, okay? Because there is a ton of stuff that I was not able to even get to. But the big arc of the idea here with Joseph is that God was with Joseph every step of the way, every part of the journey. God blessed him, God gave him favor. And because Joseph himself is, again, another foreshadowing of the Messiah, one who would be betrayed, one who would be thought even as being killed and executed, who would eventually go and be in a position that he would be able to save many because of his position. And what we're gonna find as you look all throughout the story of Genesis is the story of Genesis is not just about these heroic people. It's not just about Noah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. The story of Genesis is not just about great people. It's about a great God. A great God who every time humanity turned its back on him, he came to them. That in his grace and his mercy, he confronted our sin. In the midst of the deep pain, he covered our sin and provided a way over and over and over again for us to be forgiven, for us to be redeemed, and for us to be given a fresh start and a new beginning. And all of this is just setting the stage for how this is gonna continue on over and over and over again until we get to the final answer where God would send his one and only son in the Gospels. So you're gonna have some time now, turn into your tables. We got some great discussion. There's a couple questions there that are specific to Joseph. And then there's a question or two that are just about the whole study in general, some of the big ideas that you're taking away with you as you look at the story as a whole. So why don't you take a few moments at your tables, and then I'll be back to wrap us up tonight. On your mark, get set, go. All right, this is your 60-second warning. You got 60 seconds to wrap up your conversations, and then we're gonna pray together and get you out of here, all right? All right, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you stand with me tonight? We're gonna go ahead and take a moment to pray together. Hey, before we do, just wanna remind you a couple things. Number one, this whole study we've been going through is just such a beautiful reminder to us of what an amazing God we serve.